Welcome to episode 7 of the most masterfully named Matt and Scott pick songs from Barbra's albums that they like today, that they feel good about, but on another day they might pick something else. That's our working title at this point. I think it's working well. Hey, Matt, how are you doing today?
Yeah. Hey, I'm good. And just to remind everybody, this is Fantasia, as I think one of our guests said. Just because somebody picks Guava Jelly as their favorite song doesn't mean it's like forever and a day going to be that song.
Well, I think with Guava Jelly, it might mean that.
Just how the mood strikes.
After 2 weeks of having guests, you're just back to Matt and I. Sorry, everyone. We had the wonderful Renee and the wonderful Richard, who really livened up the show, and it was fun. And we are working on more guests, but it's just us today and an airplane. And as always, we want to tell you, go out to tuckerdspress.com and order the Barbra book. We love your pre-orders. We need your pre-orders. There's what's helping us get this whole project going. So think of it as a Kickstarter that's not really a Kickstarter, because you're ordering the book and then you're going to get it, and you're really, really going to want it. Matt, tell us something about the book. The book is done. Tell us something about the book that maybe we haven't mentioned yet in the earlier episodes.
Well, the book is done. The book has lists. I won't spoil the lists, but it's not just, I recently read a book. It was a good book, so I'm not disparaging it, but I recently read a book about Broadway flops. And I got a little bored as I went through, all the years, because it was really the same format all the way. And I would say that ours breaks format. It's not just a chronological list of albums, although it is, but we break it with the signature songs, with the collaborators. And then there's a few lists in the book as well. There's a big list at the end, and there's a few lists, like, for instance, let's just say, like, I have a list of all the Marilyn and Alan Bergman songs that Barbra has sung over the years. So anyway, yeah, those are some tidbits.
And then because of that list, I made a playlist that I have wanted to make for a very long time, and you made it easier for me. And that was the Michel Legrand and the Bergmans. I thought, you know what? I want to hear everything they ever did in order. And your book made it easy. I could make it in my iTunes really quickly. So if you have not watched our earlier episodes, and this is your first time in, we did the 60s. And most of the 70s. We're wrapping up the 70s here, and we are starting with the main event, which to me was honestly, when I chose Barbra for the first time myself. I knew Barbra before this, but it was really through my mom. But I remember sitting by the radio trying to record the main event on a cassette tape.
Yeah, the album, I asked you pretty please to include it in these episodes, just because my favorite pick from it, which is what we're going to do right now, is it's only 9. There's only 9 tracks on the album, so it's a bit thin. And 3 of those tracks are the main event. There's the long version, the short version, and my pick, the ballad version. Which I just believe is a rarely heard song in Barbra's entire discography. When Columbia puts out greatest hits albums or the Essential, Barbra Streisand, they just don't seem to use it. I know everybody wants the disco, up-tempo version, but the ballad version, I think, is just so beautiful, and it really works well slowed down. And it's Bruce Roberts on the piano, and then the strings, there's lots of strings, are conducted by the late, great Bob Esty. So that's my pick from the main event soundtrack album.
And we do hear a bit of it in the film when she's throwing the towel, right? They play a little bit of it.
Right. Yeah, well, actually, I think that's the lead into the long version, the do-do-do-do.
Oh, really? So that's not the short version?
No, no, no.
Interesting. Because again, I was such a nerd. I loved this film so much. I was 9 years old, and I took my recorder and I put it up to the TV, and I would record that part when she was throwing it, and then I'd hit
Yeah.
pause until because then they, have to kiss and all that. But
Right.
so my pick is actually just the straight main event short version. And
Yeah.
again, this was because I loved this song so much. It's still one of my favorite songs. And when she sang it at Timeless, I couldn't believe it. It blew me away.
Oh,
I didn't expect it at all. And
yeah.
I'm
How
glad
much fun was that?
oh, it was great. And it's a great version, and Disco Barbara is fun. So speaking of, we go on to Wet.
Barbra, as she has said in the past, often comes up with the cover design first and then builds an album around the cover. So, I mean, Superman is probably an example of that, and Wet is definitely an example of that. And I think, somebody said this, I don't know if it's true, but since John Peters, her companion at that point, they were never married, but John Peters thought that the wet look, because he used to be a hairdresser, that the wet look was going to be like a big thing.
I don't know where this album really sits with fans. I think it's slightly uneven, but also has some really, really great songs on it. I mean, for me, I've never been a fan of Splish Splash. I was taking a bath. It just hasn't. It never lands. But I mean, I understand why it's on there. But my pick is
It's
No
kind of
More
kooky.
Tears. I love No More
Yeah.
Tears. I do. I mean, I'm still listening to that song. It's always going to make it on a playlist for me. Her and Donna Summers are great together. And it's a good kick-ass female building song. Like, I'm surprised more people haven't done covers of it.
Yeah. Love that song. God, there's so many. You're right. There's so many good ones. I mean, I love all the ballads like Niagara. I think Kiss Me in the Rain is like should have been a bigger hit than it was. It's such a great song. The opening song, Wet, which by the way, if you look at the album in its entirety, the first song, the first word Barbra sings on the album is wet. And then the last word she sings on the album, even na 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 wet. So it begins with wet and ends with wet.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a little trivia. But my pick, sorry, we're talking a lot here, just chatty. My pick, and I listened to it last night, and it's really hard, but I was really drawn again and again to After the Rain, which I think is just so lush and sensual and gorgeous. Music by Michel Legrand, and of course, lyrics by the Bergmans. And God, it's just so gorgeous. After the Rain.
Yeah, I love when those guys work together. I mean,
it's magic. Amazing. Most of the time, it's just beautiful magic.
And then we go to Guilty, which is her best-selling album of all time, and we're here at the 80s. And I mean, this album is every single song on it, I think, is great. I mean, there's not a bad song on Guilty, in my opinion. What do you got for this one?
I went over it. I listened to it a lot when I was writing the book, but I'm going to go for Run Wild. I just love that song. And even though I've been listening to Guilty all these years, whenever I kind of go to that album, I always want to listen to Run Wild. And I love the lyric, and I love the tune, and I love the accompaniment, and I love her when she comes back from the guitar solo and she goes, Run Wild. It's just a great.
Well, her voice is impeccable on this album. I mean, she was in great shape. And I mean, I know you're not supposed to talk about a woman's age currently, but I feel like we can go. How old was Barbra when she made Guilty? Do you know? 30s?
Well, she was born in 42 and Guilty was 1980.
80.
So what's the math?
So that's like 38.
42, 52, 63, 73, 82. Yeah. Yeah. And she was in the middle of making Yentl. So she says that Guilty was one of the easiest albums she's ever made. And I think I'd have to look at my book, but I think like her total time commitment for the entire album was like 2 months.
Yeah, I mean, I know that she just recorded every song 10 times and then he took the best
Yeah.
versions. There is a spectacular, we're not here to promote other people. We're here to promote our book. And you go to Tucker DS
Right.
Press and you order it. That being said, there is an amazing semi-oral history about this album that I read online like maybe 2 years ago. I don't even know where it is, but I learned a ton about it.
Oh, I quote that article. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
a great article
it's
about how they made
good.
the album. Well, it's Barry Gibb's people. You know, they mixed it. They did the demos and the tracks in Florida where he lives in Miami, and then they went to the West Coast, met with Barbara, and in between script sessions for Yentl, she laid down the tracks, and like you said, she sang it 10 times or whatever, and then they went back into the mixing studio and put it together. So yeah,
So my pick
yeah,
is Make It Like a Memory.
oh yeah.
And I don't know how people out there do with their love of Barbra, but I will get obsessed with a song for a while and then like that's my go-to song. And right now, Make It Like a Memory is my all-time favorite Barbra song in this moment. Like I'm
Okay.
listening to it kind of obsessively, especially on vinyl. I love the whole big music at the end, it goes on forever. And if you crank that up, it sounds good. That's my number one thing to listen to on vinyl. And her performance is
I mean, what an
amazing.
audacious way! What an audacious way to end the album. I mean, it's that's out there. Ending it with that. I mean, what is it, like a 3-minute orchestral?
Yeah, it's
Bum
awesome
bum bum
too.
bum 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 bum. I know it's good. It's good.
And because we're in a safe space here, I got this album when it came out because, as I said, starting with Main Event is when I like became obsessed with Barbra and got all the albums. I knew that Barbra didn't play any instruments. So in my little kid mind, when she sings that last line, she left the recording studio and get in her car and drive home. And the band is playing that and she's leaving. And so next time you listen to that, just imagine it because you can picture her like blowing out. And I pictured the one in Star is Born, that place. I don't know, by all means, no comments
Right.
on that. I was a kid, all right? So we've
That's
got Memories, which at the time I was annoyed with this album because I'm like, we don't really have a lot of new stuff, but they did do this because of her working on Yentl, and Guilty was so big they needed to get something out and it was going to be a while. So this is basically a retread of Greatest Hits Volume 2 with a couple songs on there. But what do you got from this one? Did you find out how many it sold?
1 million. So
Oh, so nowhere
not as
near.
much as you thought. I think second best selling. I could be wrong, but I think second best selling is Broadway album. I think it's Guilty, Broadway album, and then I'd have to look. Yeah.
Okay. So I feel like
My choice.
your choice.
I'm gonna go, even though it's got the new songs like Memory and My Heart Belongs to Me. Is that right? Oh no, Coming
Yeah.
In and Out of Your Life. Coming In and Out
Yeah.
of Your Life. I'm gonna go with Lost Inside of You because I didn't know until years after being a fan that it's a different version of Lost Inside of You that we had never heard before. And I think people forget that sometimes. I know I did. And so this is the single version of Lost Inside of You. After A Star is Born was such a huge hit, and before Barbra recorded her next album, which I think was Superman, she toyed with the idea of doing a studio album of Star is Born songs. So she actually recorded this, Lost Inside of You, the one that's on Release Me,
With One More Look at You.
with One More Look at You, and a couple other ones. I think they did Woman in the Moon, and I think they did, I don't know, one other. Anyway, Nick DeCaro did the arrangement of this, and you'll notice there's, it's just a different version. It's just lovely, and it's, I think something that people forget exists. So I'm going with that.
Well, okay. Fans of this show, and I know there are so many of you, you have been keeping track at when do Matt and I pick the same songs? And this is amazing to me. We have only picked the same songs 3 times. And those 3 picks were on Greatest Hits Volume 2, and now Memories, because I'm picking Lost Inside of You.
Oh,
it
okay,
has always been my favorite. I think it's one of her top 5 vocal performances ever. I love it so much. It's so much better than the movie version. But here's where I need you to school me, because for the first time in a very, very long time, I heard the Lost Inside of Me version from Just for the Record, because I never listened to that version because I listened to this version, and it is slightly different than this version and the movie version. The version that's on Just for the Record is another version of that song.
You know what? I would have to listen to that to be able to talk about that.
All right, well, we're going to save that. That's it, to be continued. Right now, there's a fan at home that's either saying, Scott's wrong, it's the exact same version. But when I listened to it, it did not sound the same to me. And
well, it has, I know, well, what I remember is that it does have the movie dialogue in front of it, but you're talking about the song part of it. Star is Born, Lost Inside of You. Oh, film dialogue, alternate soundtrack version. You're right.
And it was good. Now, it's not as good as this one, but I do not listen to that song. And I'm like, so how crazy is that?
I'm going to have to listen to it. I honestly haven't listened to it in a long time. Usually because it has that dialogue in front of it. I guess maybe I kind of skip it.
Me
I don't
too.
want to hear the dialogue, but yeah. Okay.
And, but I do think
have a homework assignment.
Yeah, so everyone needs to listen to Lost Inside of You and Lost Inside of You from Memories, Just for the Record, and Memories, and throw in Star is Born as well. And then we'll figure out what our favorite is, but it's Memories, which is actually a great album. As I said, I was a little disappointed at first because there wasn't that much new stuff, but now I'm all for it. So now we go, this is kind of fun. I like that in this 5 album section, it's both of our entries to the world of Barbra Streisand, and you, for yours, it was Yentl. This was the first vinyl you bought. Was it vinyl or CD or cassette?
It was vinyl. I bought it for my sister. I bought it for my sister's birthday. So her birthday is the end of October. So it was out by end of October '83. And wait, this is how the story goes. I actually bought my sister an Olivia Newton-John album, and when she opened it and we put it on to play, the vinyl was warped, which happened back in the day. So I took it back to whatever record store I bought it from and got her another one, vinyl warped. So I said, forget Olivia Newton-John. I want to trade it in for Yentl. And so I brought it home and we listened to it. And I ended up taking over the album and playing it over and over and over again until I was able to see the movie in December. So of course I'd heard the music first and then saw the movie second. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it is kind of a backwards way to do it.
Yeah, totally.
So this one was a hard pick for me because there are a lot I could have picked, and also knowing what's coming up, I was sort of cheating a little bit. But then in the end, I said, you know what, I got to do it. And I picked Piece of Sky because in reality, of course, I love the concert version so much more because of memory and there being 2 Barbras, but it's still an incredible recording on its own. And I was like, if I picked No Wonder or, you know, a different one, it would be a lie. The best song on Yentl is Piece of Sky. I had to pick it. So that was my pick.
Okay. Well, shocking, because I picked Piece of Sky as well.
Look at us.
I know.
But it's just so good.
How can you not? How can you not? I mean, I would be like contrary and do like a deep cut or something just because I've heard Piece of Sky so much. But Piece of Sky is the OG Barbra Streisand anthem song. It still impresses me to hear it. It still is this journey that you get on that you're totally rewarded for at the end when she holds that note for forever and ever and evermore. And my God, I mean, and you know, if somebody said, play me 5 Barbra Streisand songs that show me why you love her so much, this would be one of them for sure. It's
You
just so
know,
iconic and so lovely.
one thing we don't do in the book, and I'm very glad, is we don't talk about like pitting songs against each other. There's no list of the best Barbra songs because those things are ridiculous. But I think a really interesting debate would be what truly is the best Barbra anthem song. Is it Don't Rain on My Parade or is it Piece of Sky? She's so famous for Don't Rain on My Parade, but in some ways, Piece of Sky has her sensibility. And man, it is moving. I can't say that I could pick between them, but it's an interesting debate.
Yeah, but I'm so glad we agree. Piece of Sky, oh my God. Fantastic.
Well, and it was funny because I wanted to pick something else. I truly wanted not to pick that song. And I even like sampled, because I also really like, I think it's No Matter What Happens. Yeah, No Matter What Happens. I really like that song. I feel like it fits so well in the movie. It's a great plot device, like how the Bergmans just really got that. But it's not better than Piece of Sky. And of course, Papa is Papa, but and I don't know. So there we did it. And we agreed on 2 of the 5. What's happened to us?
In one episode. I know.
But up to this point, it had been all greatest hits. So as always, if you love Barbra, you're going to love this book. The book is turned into the printer, so it is out of our hands. We are now just waiting for it to come back. The moment it shows up on my front door, I start shipping them out. The rest of the world will get the book on April 24th. Those who buy it at Amazon or Barnes & Noble or your local bookstore, which we do suggest you always supporting your local bookstore. We're not against them. But I'm just letting you know, we ship when they come in. I have no idea how long it's going to take to get back because, supply chain and blah, 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 blah. But my point is pre-orders truly help us. So go to tuckerdspress.com and get the best Barbra book there ever was. So next time we are going to be continuing in the 80s. Matt, where should people follow you and all that good stuff?
I have a YouTube channel, which is where you're probably watching this, but otherwise my website, which has been online for almost 20 years, is www.barbra-archives.info.